session. And of course, before we start, we'd love for you to, please give me the honor of sharing stage with you. So we'd love for you to come online.
Thanks, Nikita, for inviting me. Today I'm going to discuss around state of digital trust report that we've created. So maybe let me quickly share my screen.
Mr. Menon, before that, just before that, before you start with your amazing presentation, we've got a question to ask. Your love for traveling reflects in your profession too. So ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Menon is an avid traveler. You've covered just about every country from Middle East to Australia. So naming just the countries, what would you recommend to our amazing audience members? Now, number one, for family trips.
Tokyo. I would always go to Japan. That's been my best destination so far. I've enjoyed the culture. There's a lot more to learn. So I'd always prefer Tokyo.
Fantastic. Second, for career growth.
Sorry, I missed that, Nikita.
For career growth, which country would you recommend for career growth?
I think with digital and with all of this, I mean, what's stopping us, right? It doesn't matter anymore. We've just released ourselves into this world right now.
Be where you are. I think that's the country.
Enjoy your surroundings.
Third, so of course, from family trips to solo trips, which country would you recommend for a solo trip?
I'm the sort of person who'd like to travel to like mountainscapes. So I always go back to India, mostly Uttarakhand, those hilly areas right beside the Himalayas. So that's my preference, but yeah, it depends on.
Fantastic answer, Mr. Menon. Avid traveler you are, and thank you so very much. Stage is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nikita. So let me quickly share my screen. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Karunanand Menon. So I'm the Senior Solutions Architect in Octa. And basically, I'm part of the team called Solutions Engineering, which takes care of meeting customers, understanding the technical requirements, putting in the right architecture in place so that there is successful outcomes from those identity initiatives. Just to give a brief overview of Octa, we are an identity management company. We are the leaders in identity management for quite some time. So 6 odd times in Gartner quadrants and Forrester Waves, etc. But just to give you a perspective of today's session, we are here to present what we call as a state of digital trust report. So as part of our market research and embracing a particular market, what we normally do is we go and conduct a lot of surveys, right? So this is one of them where we have actually looked at the state of digital trust overall from an Asian community standpoint. And this survey was conducted alongside the YouGov online platform, and we covered quite a lot of geographies: Singapore, Hong Kong, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia. We did a worldwide version also, but we did zoom into Asia specifically. Now, the intention of this study was really to understand how digital trust is being perceived by consumers. So effectively, as me as an end user, how would I have a vision around what is supposed to be zero trust, and secondly around digital trust, and then secondly around how organizations are getting ready and catering to those, right? So let me just jump into the results. So we just wanted to present certain results and give you a little bit of snippet around how Octa comes into picture, or what we think around identity access management playing a key role here. So some of these findings, right? So this is one of the first, where we are talking about what is the most important aspect when it comes to trusting a brand or a digital service, right? When you're online and you're trying to onboard into a digital service yourself, what do you look for, or what are the aspects that is very important for you as an end consumer? So that's where we look at, a lot of people voted for service reliability. But as you can see, customers are becoming more and more aware of security, more and more aware of privacy, more and more aware of the attack patterns which are going on in the market. So that's where you see that good security policies and practices becomes one of the key. So what that means is that consumers expect organizations to show that level of commitment and transparency when it comes to security policies and practices, right? So that's one big takeaway from the study. Obviously, quick response time, customer service has to be high on the radar, because we are talking digital services have to be on the fingertips, right? But if you also look at it, we are talking about transparent and easy to understand kind of security privacy practices, right? We know we always sign up for, multiple pages of privacy acceptance, and we just accept it because we can't really go through it. But what consumers expect is there a better way to do it, right? Can we be more transparent and upfront about what our privacy policy actually means? So these are some of the heavyweight items, apart from ethical values and so on and so forth, right? So that's what our study came about with. Now, we also see that there are reservations when it comes to purchasing items. So when I, as a consumer, need to go in and purchase certain services or use certain services digitally, what are the key concerns, right? What are the reservations that consumers normally have when they onboard into a new service? Breach is one of the biggest concerns. So customers expect data to be kept well in control, well within the organizations, and they expect good data practices. So when you look at it, data breach is one of the key concerns. Poor product image is normally something that comes in when you browse for an item, and then you look at the vendor, and then you see, he does not have good responses, reactions, or ratings. So that's something that customers do look for before actually engaging. So that again goes back to your net promoter score and how you enhance your brand, as well as your services, etc. Legitimacy of the website. This has become a big topic nowadays, because phishing attacks, different type of attack patterns, because we are all living our life digitally in a way, and we are being susceptible to all these attacks even more. So customers do realize that that's somewhat of a concern, right? Too much personal information. So when you have those long forms which you need to fill to get on board a service, if you were to give your date of birth and your a lot of details, that's when people start to become very jittery about providing those information to those applications. So idea is to make sure that reservations are kind of handled. And again, upfront service payment is not a trend anymore. People want to pay as they go, ability to get a better deal, etc. Right? So those are the reservations. Now, when it comes to lose of trust or loss of trust, right? When do people lose trust on a brand? And what are the likely causes, and what do they do about it? That's what these statistics tell you. So if you are looking at lose of trust, what could be a potential reason? When you are already a user for a service, typically what happens is, if you intentionally see misuse, or if you even doubt that there's a misuse of personal data, that's a big no-no for our customers, right? So that again brings back the concept of privacy first kind of design principles when you're building services for your customer. Data breach, when a brand experiences data breach and is in the press for all the bad reasons, then that's something that is a deterrent for consumers to continue using your service. Changing terms, so that's the WhatsApp. The recent example is really WhatsApp, where they changed the security policies to allow Facebook access to all the information, and people were taken aback. So changing policies without giving notifications, or even changing policies with a short runway for consumers to accept, is kind of treated as not a welcome sign. Operating and sourcing products ethically, etc., low-key items, but in general, when it comes to purely digital, these are the expectations from a customer that this should not happen. And what happens when a breach or a security incident happens? They change the user settings, they stop using service, or they delete the apps, which is almost equivalent to stop using the services. etc. Right? So they take very adversarial kind of steps. Last time when we were all in in a very old-fashioned way of interacting with the consumers, they didn't have much choice to really leave and switch to another vendor quite easily. But with digital, what's happening is they have much more choices, they have much more places to go for if something doesn't work with your service, and they would not hesitate, right? So currently users are impatient, they want to just really switch to the next service essentially. Now what do we see from awareness of security from an end user standpoint, right? So consumers are aware of security nowadays because digitally they've learned out of experience. Sometimes they've learned out of news, they've learned out of, sometimes very good thing is around education from the industry or the services that they are using. They sometimes take extra steps to educate, like banking, for example. They do tell their customers what's a phishing attack, what's an OTP attack, etc. So which is also a good thing. So consumers are more and more aware of what are the different security threats. But if you look at the security threats which consumers have really voted for, it's mostly around an identity or about himself, right? So it's about identity theft, which could be internal act of identity theft or external act of identity theft by malicious players. It could be a data breach. Again, it could be internally a data breach which happened because of poor controls or poor housekeeping, or it could be data breach because of a malicious player who's an insider, or it could be totally like a API fiasco where somebody caught up with your API signatures and they were able to extract a lot of information. Password theft is still a big aspect. Passwords are still being stolen. If you go to haveibuyandpawned.com website, you would know how many of your credentials are already out in the market in the dark web where it's out for sale, right? So these are the kind of things which end consumers do have a good conscious idea about, and those are the things we should try to help our customers out of. Phishing attacks, malware attacks, all of that also comes into play because effectively there are bad actors trying to get into your environment and sneak into your data. Now, how do we see organizations viewing this, right? So what are organizations doing? We do have some more statistics, but we didn't want to share a lot in this session. We would definitely post those details, but what we wanted to look for is how consumers look at an organization and a brand in terms of interacting digitally, and what are organizations doing to help reach that level of trust, right? So one is a lot of investment is happening, especially with COVID from 2020 onwards. You would see that everybody's investing heavily on security and application technologies. Like a very simple aspect is around a lot of customers have onboarded DevSecOps during this period. Before that, DevSecOps was just in pockets or sometimes not even present, but people have actually started using those kind of practices. So that's one thing. And the tooling around DevSecOps and the tools and the capabilities that evolve around that is all being purchased now. So there's a lot of investment happening into security applications and technology space. The other big chunk is around training and awareness, right? So when I'm talking about training and awareness, there are two pieces to it. One is the internal training, internal awareness, making sure your employees, your staff, your vendors are, consistently practicing those right aspects when it comes to security. It's also about creating awareness in the consumer space, which means that now organizations are going forward with enabling and teaching in a way your consumers about what security threat is, what can go wrong, what to avoid, etc. Right? We've seen some of those innovative solutions where there are like click-through attack, kind of like a playback of an attack, and gives the consumers a sense of what's happening behind the scene. Again, third-party security measures like complying to standards, bringing in audit services, bringing in third-party assessments, vulnerability tools, etc. So that's also high on the agenda, right? So this is where organizations are going in, and obviously Octa as an identity provider, we basically come and play a very specific role in this overall equation, right? So just to give you an idea, Octa basically we cater to our customers using our Octa Identity Cloud, which is a SaaS identity cloud solution. Now, what do we cater to? So one is around workforce identity, which really is about housekeeping your back office or your, the staff and employees, for example, so that your employees can get access to, their applications, their VPNs, their servers, etc., in a responsible way, right? The other aspect is around protecting the consumer themselves, right? So that's where we provide those additional, scalable, secure solution where you could actually build in a very seamless journey for your end users, but also make sure that there is security involved, right? So you could go do things like passwordless authentication, etc., with the consumer identity platform. Now, the third area around zero trust is where we are providing an identity centric approach to zero trust. And as we speak, a lot of emphasis is happening on zero trust nowadays, because it just accelerated with COVID, and people are really going towards implementing a zero trust model. So that's essentially something that we play a big part on as well, right? Now, eventually, our end objective is that we could use identity of your customers, workforce partners, etc., and then provide access to your applications, your applications like your consumer applications, your employee application, be it on-prem cloud. You could provide access to infrastructure like VPN, your compute, your servers and virtual desktops, etc. You should be able to protect your APIs, both public as well as the internal APIs. So that's kind of where Octa sees ourselves playing a big part. Now, eventually, what we want to really come to is a point where you could basically have a centralized risk engine, which basically takes a lot of signals from the available resources around you. Like it could be user, it could be device, it could be location, network, etc. We could take in feed from third-party providers like Proofpoint, Carbon Black, etc. But essentially what we are looking at is really making sure that there is a risk engine with which you can associate for authorization decisions. And then based on that, you should be able to provide a risk-based access to any resource. This would mean that the users would benefit because they would have much more seamless user interactions when it comes to application access and accessing the services. But it also means greater security because we are contextualizing each time when we have to actually calculate the risk, right? So that gives a win-win both in terms of usability point of view as well as from an security standpoint. So that's what I just had to present, and we do have some links which we will share. So I think probably during this session we would post these in our booths, and you could visit our counters, etc. So we do have the white paper which you could take a look at. We also have something called a zero trust assessment. So that is Octa's zero trust assessment, which is available for anybody who's willing to take part in it. And it basically gives a sense of where your organization is from a zero trust strategy standpoint, and where your organization should go, or how you could go there, right? So it basically gives you a full-fledged assessment. It's completely online. There's not you don't need to provide a lot of inside information about your org. It can be very generic responses, but we can still come up with a roadmap for you. So with that, I would just hand it over to Nikita. Thanks, Nikita, again for having me here.